ATRX. CEO of the Show Me Institute, which is a nonpartisan think tank for free market policies. Good morning, Brenda Talent.
Good morning, McGraw.
What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about the city of Bridgeton and their pension plan and how this is a warning bell for all of our other municipal pension plans because Bridgeton just underwent an audit by the state auditor, and they found that their plan is underfunded by about $14 million. In fact, most plans would like to be where it, and these are some technical terms, but there's something called unfunded liabilities. And so what you look at is these pension plans. This one is a defined benefit, which means it says you work so many years, you're going to get this benefit once you retire. And what they do is they look at their pool of assets and their liabilities, the promises they've made to their employees, and they figure out, well, how close are we to funding that or not? And you want these plans to be about 80% funded. This one's about 67% funded, according to the state auditor. And the problem is what we've seen in the public sector is a number of governments still continue with defined benefit plans where they're making a promise about what they're going to pay their employees after they retire. The private sector has moved principally to defined contribution plans. Like the easiest example is like your 401k,
right,
where you put money in, your employer puts some money in, and whatever's there is there.
Right. And as opposed to a plan where it's sort of run by somebody else. What's the story? Bridgeton hasn't had a meeting in a couple of years over this thing?
Since their finance committee is supposed to oversee the plan, the city council is actually the administrator, but is the trustee. But they haven't met since between 2012 and 2015. And of course, there's an element of all of this where you say, well, how well would their finance committee really know how to run a pension plan? I mean, you would delegate it to an administrator. But yeah, they didn't have a meeting. There are questions about the actuarial assumptions they made regarding the plan. They haven't been making the contributions that they needed to make in order to keep the plan at an 80% funding level.
Right.
Now, what they did do is in 2012, let's give them kudos for this. In 2012, they did move their employees to a defined contribution plan. So the defined benefit plan, the one that was under audit, has been closed. But there's this huge liability outstanding because they've made promises to their employees who are participating in that plan.
So Bridgeton is, I looked it up here, it's about 11,000 people, 12,000 people, one of those small towns in North County. I didn't even know if you worked for Bridgeton you were due a pension. Who knew that? Well,
there are several municipalities that have pensions, and of course we have fire districts, police departments. So there are a number of pensions within the state of Missouri, including 5 very large ones. And of course, the issue with a community like Bridgeton is how are they going to raise the funds to satisfy those obligations? Well, in 2015, they did pass a hotel tax. And so that hotel tax is generating, they said, about $200 million.
Right.
And they'll be using that money in order to make contributions to the plan.
Or they'll just give tickets out to people going by with a broken taillight all day long.
That's another option, because the bottom line is that they've made a promise. And there are parts of their ordinances which leave open the question of whether they might be able to pull back their obligation. I think that would be a real problem for them. But you would assume that they're going to do what they need to do in order to keep their retirees receiving their paycheck. If
you live in Bridgeton and you realize that they just raised taxes on hotels and motels to sort of bridge the pension gap, you ask yourself, well, wait, what about the money for the basic necessities for the residents of Bridgeton, which I guess goes to the bigger question is, do we really need a town of Bridgeton in the first place?
Well, I think, one of the issues all of these municipalities have is really how are they going to fulfill the services that they've promised to their residents. And I think one of the things this pension plan highlights is the fact that the taxpayers within that city, they are on the hook for making sure that the city fulfills its contractual obligations.
So this is the first state audit. We're expecting more audits from these towns with these pension plans?
It'll be interesting to see. I didn't dig into what the auditor has on her to-do list, but there's a joint committee from our General Assembly, which will highlights different municipality pension plans that are below the 80% level. And in fact, one of the reasons that they indicate they picked Bridgeton to audit was the fact that they had been consistently below the 80% percentage. So I suspect other municipalities that might be in that same category would also be open to audit.
Brendan Talent, where can we read more about this stuff?
ShowMeInstitute.org, and Michael Highsmith has been following this issue for us.
Michael Highsmith, who's been filling in for you from time to time.
He is. I hope he's doing a good job.
He's a very nice young man, so we'll break him in correctly over here.
All right, good.
Brendan Talent, CEO of the Show Me Institute, showmeinstitute.org. Brendan, have a good week. Thanks.
You too.